Hi everyone, I'm Dr. John Daniel with Simi Psychological Group, and today I want to talk a little bit about how to manage our negative self-talk when we're noticing that to be a problem. So I want to talk about what negative self-talk is, why we should care, and then some ideas about what we can do about it. So negative self-talk is that refers to those thoughts that we all have. Um, they're kind of mean to ourselves or negative to ourselves about ourselves. So it might be things like, "Oh, why did I say that?" or "I'm so dumb," or "I look so fat," or all of those negative thoughts that we might experience. And sometimes they're just there in the background, and sometimes they're louder in the front of our minds or might be harder to quiet down. And so, of course, we don't want to be thinking of ourselves that way or to feel those thoughts are true or how I should embrace myself or um, basically this is who I am, those negative thoughts. And instead, we want to be able to take a look and challenge some of those. And so it's a really important question. Sometimes it sounds obvious, but when we apply it to ourselves, might feel less obvious. Is why should we care? A lot of times we might think, you know, um, changing my thought isn't going to change what's happening around me. So, hey, I'm having trouble getting along with people, or I don't like the way I look, or whatever it is. Um, it's tempting to feel changing the way I think isn't going to change those things. So what's the point? It's just a thought. And really, when when thoughts are fleeting, so when they kind of come and easily go and we don't think twice about them, then maybe it's not a big deal. But when the negative self-talk starts to be very repetitive, it's happening all day or most days, uh, it's in lots of different situations. It's even though we unfortunately can get used to it, almost not notice that it's there, it is playing a role in how we're feeling, especially how we're feeling about ourselves, and in how we're interacting with our world, in the confidence that's coming across or not coming across, or the optimism looking forward to my day versus trudging through another day. All all of these things relate to how we're thinking, and especially how we're thinking about ourselves. So if you're wanting to take a look at managing your own negative self talk, it's really important to prioritize why that's valuable, why that's going to be a help in your life. And then we can jump to, okay, how to do it. What does that look like? The first step, because of what I talked about, sometimes it's just such a natural thing. And maybe it's been happening for so long. And maybe it doesn't really get in the way of what you actually do. Um, all of these things can make it hard to notice that it's even happening. So the first step is really to, even you can challenge yourself for the next couple days. I'm going to notice when my thoughts are critical of myself. How much is that happening? And even think of it like a little bit of an experiment. I'm just going to notice. I'm not going to commit to changing anything. I'm just going to notice if that's happening. And noticing is honestly half the battle, because when things get brought to our awareness, especially when with the intention that I want to change it, even eventually, that awareness is key in being able to change anything that we want to be working on. So that first step, really noticing how much this is happening and what it sounds like. And then the next step is starting to think about how can I not get rid of these thoughts, but what can I do when they come up? We don't have all that much control of what thought pops up. And so if we go into this kind of, yeah, I want to work on my negative thoughts by not having them, then we're really setting ourselves up to not be successful because they're going to pop up. And that part, that's okay. But when they pop up, what is it that I want to do? And that's where we can start to learn a different pattern. That's where over time we can start to actually rewire what our brain naturally does. and help ease those negative thoughts and maybe increase some of that positive thoughts. So is so when we're noticing them, right, replacing them becomes important. So what do I want to do to replace? Now, sometimes we also fall into the trap of I got to replace it with just the opposite. So maybe it's, oh, I don't like the way I look. I have to replace it with I look great. Which, by the way, if you can authentically believe that, then that's great. But sometimes in those funks that we fall in or in those moments that we fall in, that might be harder to believe. And um, we're not so good at, I don't know, tricking ourselves into believing things. So if that's feeling too hard, one first step is you can just talk about your overall goal. So, for example, you notice yourself saying, I hate the way I look today. Instead of just saying the opposite, you can say, I'm working on being nicer to myself. I'm working on not being so mean to myself. And maybe that's all you can say in that moment, but it kind of cuts the urge to stay in that negative thought or to dwell on it. And it's enough to say, hey, I'm working on being nicer to myself. And then a little bit later in the day, you might have an opportunity to say something more positive to yourself. So, one good first step is just when you notice that negative thought in terms of replacing it, replace it with reminding yourself of your even eventual goal. I'm working on being nicer to myself. And then, if you can, find a even small piece of evidence or something I'm overlooking or a way to look at it differently, right? Um, then that's also a good thing to add in terms of replacing. So, for example, if it's, oh, I can't believe I said that, I'm so dumb, it can be, you know what, that was just one part of the conversation, the rest went fine. Or, um, if it's about the, oh, I hate the way I look today, it could be, but I do like, I don't know, how my hair looks today, or one part rather than the whole. And focusing on something that you might be feeling good about is another great thing to do. And again, if you're not feeling there yet, you could just start with reminding yourself of your eventual goal of I'm working on being nicer to myself. So those are really just the two places to start. We want to work on catching how much we're being negative to ourselves and starting to learn how can we replace those thoughts, and even just be intentional in um, wanting to be more positive with ourselves. And that foundation can really help getting us to where it is that we want to go. And of course, if you're feeling like you need more support and more help, we're always here to help at Simi Psychological Group. So feel free to reach out, and thank you for listening.